Welcome back to Math 103. This is video number 12 on fair division. There are several ways of solving this problem. We gave one of them in the previous video, and here is yet another one. The important point is that each player is getting one item from their bid list. Whether you use this division, or yet another one that you might have come up with, the important thing is that each player gets a share from their own bid list, and that's how we know that it is a fair division. Now, we mentioned earlier that sometimes the divider happens to divide the goods in such a way that it's impossible to give each player a share from their bid list. In this case, a standoff is said to occur. So let's see what that means through an example. Suppose that our old friends Eve, Fred, Gail, and Hank are dividing a piece of land. Gail is the one randomly selected as the divider, and they use the lone divider method. And she goes ahead and divides the land into 4 equally valuable shares from her point of view. It'll be useful to have this picture in front of us when we talk through what's going to happen next. So she calls these shares share 1, share 2, share 3, share 4. When her siblings go through and write down their evaluations in dollars of each of these shares, these are the results, and let's look at what happens. We're going to need to understand which shares count as fair shares for each player. In other words, we need to know each player's bid list. When we go and find each player's minimum fair share amount in dollars, and therefore we can go through and figure out their bid lists, something a little bit disturbing happens, or something rather inconvenient. So for Eve, there's something about S3 that makes it much more valuable to her than any of the other shares, and Fred also gets the same impression about the value of S3 compared to the other shares. So ultimately, only share 3 counts for Eve as meeting her minimum fair share amount, or more, so her bid list consists solely of S3, and for Fred it's the same story. Only S3 lives up to his minimum fair share amount, the other shares do not. Okay, so that's going to be a bit of a problem. To appreciate what a problem it is, look at what's wrong with the following division and the reasoning behind it. Right, so Gail, well, let's suppose someone proposes that Gail should get S2, since no one else wants it. Okay, that's true enough. Hank should get S4, because that's a perfectly acceptable share to him. Okay, and that leaves us to deal with Eve and Fred. All this is fine so far. Now, let Eve have S3, someone is suggesting this. Let Eve have S3, since it's the only share which is fair for her, and she values it more highly than Fred does. As a result, Fred is left with the one remaining share, and that's S1. So think, what's wrong with that picture? What's wrong with it is that it's leaving Fred with S1, and that's not acceptable to him. In spite of the other reasoning that was given, the whole story about Eve valuing S3 more highly than Fred does, that is not solving the problem that Fred is getting stuck here with a share that is not a fair share to him. And that is the one thing that we are not allowed to do in this subject. This scenario is an example of what we call a standoff. So the particular way that Gail has divided up the land creates a situation in which only S3 will satisfy Eve, and only S3 will satisfy Fred, but we can't give S3 to either of them. We cannot give S3 to either of them the way S3 is, because if we did that, that would leave the other one without a fair share. That's not acceptable. We will have to find another way, and the key idea is that when Gail marked off the land, she put down orange cones, and orange cones can be moved to other locations. They can be shifted. So here's the procedure for resolving a standoff and producing a fair division. So first, you set aside the share over which the standoff occurs. So S3, that's the one that Eve and Fred are having a standoff over. Next, you accommodate all the players who are not involved in the standoff by giving each one a fair share from their own bid list. Okay. We of course can't give S3 to anyone. That's been set aside. So for example, give Gail S2 and Hank S4. So in this example, S2 was perfectly acceptable to Gail. It would have to be. She's the divider. S4 was on Hank's bid list. Fantastic. We take care of them. So now that they've been taken care of, the fair division problem is partly solved. We're now down to 2 players and only some of the original land. So what do we do with the remaining goods, the remaining land, the remaining shares? We merge them into a single so-called super share. If the original demarcations between shares were created by putting down orange cones in locations that Gale, the original divider, selected, then we can also pick those cones back up, or pick some of them back up, and merge what we used to call S1 and S3 into a single new plot of land. So as of this stage, we've already taken care of Gale and Hank, and we're left with just this one super share and the 2 remaining players, Eve and Fred. The crucial idea now is that we now have a smaller fair division problem. We're making progress because we took care of 2 players and some of the land. We are reduced to fewer players and less land. And this now becomes a new fair division problem unto itself. So we have 2 players and a piece of land. What do? We use the divider-chooser method. So Eve and Fred use the divider-chooser method to split the super share between the 2 of them. Please go on to the next video.